Ever feel that itch to build your own game, but then you just stare into this huge ocean of game engine options?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Totally. So today, we're kind of tossing you a life raft. We're going to dive deep into the world of game engines, specifically to help you navigate that confusing landscape.
And we've pulled together quite a bit of information for you. We looked at PubNub's comparison of popular engines, got info straight from the GDevelop and Godot official sites, found a really helpful YouTube tutorial, Godot for absolute beginners, checked out a Reddit discussion on the best engine for newcomers, and even a comparison of Godot and GameMaker Studio 2.
Great stuff. So our mission today is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
We want to give you, whether you're just curious about making games or you're actually ready to jump in, a solid understanding of the top engines.
Right. We'll look at Unreal Engine, Unity, Godot, GameMaker Studio, and we'll touch on GDevelop too.
Highlighting what makes each one tick, but without getting totally bogged down in super technical jargon. Okay, so to get us started, what is a game engine exactly?
Right. So think of a game engine as like the foundational software you build your game on. It's really a software framework.
Okay.
Yeah, it gives developers a whole bunch of pre-built tools and libraries. These handle all the common stuff like rendering graphics, physics, how things move and bump into each other, audio, all that.
So it's like having a fully equipped workshop ready to go.
Yeah.
Instead of making your own hammer and saw every time.
Exactly. You've got the essentials right there.
You can just focus on the unique thing you want to build.
Precisely. It lets developers focus their energy on what makes their game special, the gameplay, the story, the characters, instead of, reinventing the wheel for basic functions every single time.
That makes a lot of sense. So with all these different engines out there, what are the key things someone should really be thinking about when they're trying to pick one?
Okay, yeah, there are several really crucial things. First up, the game engine features. Does it actually have the tools you need for your specific game idea? Like, if you want photorealistic 3D, some engines are just, better suited for that.
Right, matching the tools to the job. What else?
Ease of use is huge, especially if you're a beginner. How easy is it to actually learn and use? Does it have things like visual scripting, or is it mainly for people comfortable with code?
That's a big one. You don't want to get stuck on the interface before you even make a character move, right?
Exactly. Then there's platform support. Where do you want people to play your game? PC, consoles, mobile, .web. You got to make sure the engine can actually, export to those platforms you're aiming for.
Makes perfect sense. You wouldn't want to build your dream mobile game and find out your engine doesn't support iPhones or something.
Exactly that. Performance is another vital one. How well does the engine run the type of game you want to make? A big, complex 3D world needs a lot more horsepower than, say, a simple 2D puzzle game.
Okay, thinking about how smooth the final game will actually run. Got it. What about when you hit a snag? Like, inevitably.
Good question. That's where community and support come in. Is there a big, active community? Is the official documentation good, easy to understand, up to date?
Yeah.
Because if you get stuck, having that support network, those resources, it can be a lifesaver. Seriously.
Finally, getting stuck alone is super frustrating.
Yeah.
And the elephant in the room, perhaps, cost.
Right. What's the price? Is it free? Open source, maybe? Is it a subscription? Or maybe royalty-based, where you pay a percentage after your game makes a certain amount of money.
That could make a huge difference, especially for indie devs.
Absolutely. It really impacts your budget.
Okay, so a lot to weigh up. Let's dive into some specifics. How about we start with a big one known for its visuals, Unreal Engine.
Sure. Unreal Engine, or UE, developed by Epic Games. It's definitely a tower house. It's really famous for cutting-edge graphics, like super high fidelity. You see it in a lot of those big AAA games.
Like Fortnite, right?
Exactly. Fortnite, Gears of War, even Street Fighter V, games that really push visual boundaries.
So what are the big pluses for choosing Unreal?
Well, the high-end graphics are obviously a major draw. If stunning visuals are your top priority, UE is, a front-runner. It also has something called Blueprint Visual Scripting.
Ah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's fantastic because it lets people create complex game logic just by connecting these visual nodes. You don't necessarily have to write traditional code.
That sounds really useful for like artists or designers maybe, or even beginners just learning logic.
It really is. But the main language is C++ big, which is super powerful, gives you lots of control.
No.
But it definitely has a steeper learning curve. On the upside, UE provides a really robust toolset for pretty much everything. Animation, physics, you name it. Plus a huge community, tons of resources. It's very scalable too for small projects or massive ones, and supports next-gen tech.
Sounds incredibly capable.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are downsides too.
Oh, for sure. That power means a steeper learning curve, like we said, especially C++ Ding. It's also pretty resource intensive. You'll need a decent computer.
Okay.
Project files can get really big, which sometimes slows down how quickly you can test changes. And while it's free to start, there are royalty fees that kick in once your game earns significant revenue.
Right, that percentage cut.
Yeah. And finally, while you can make 2D games, Octopath Traveler is an example. It's generally seen as less optimized for 2D compared to some other engines.
Gotcha. So amazing visual power, massive tool set, but maybe a bit daunting for beginners or simpler projects. Let's switch gears to another giant, Unity.
Unity, yeah, incredibly popular. You see it everywhere, from solo indies to big studios. It's really known for its versatility and being relatively accessible.
Versatile how?
Well, it's used for all sorts. Beautiful 2D games like Cuphead or Hollow Knight, huge mobile hits like Pokemon Go, VR stuff like Beat Saber, even complex games like Hearthstone or Escape from Tarkov. It just shows how adaptable it is.
Wow, that is a wide range. What makes it so popular?
Well, for starters, a massive indie presence. Like over half the games on Steam are supposedly made with Unity.
That's huge.
It is. The interface is generally seen as quite user-friendly, and the asset store is, well, it's enormous. A huge marketplace for ready-made assets, tools, plugins.
Like a shortcut for building blocks.
Kind of, yeah. It offers great cross-platform support, mobile, console, VR, web, you name it. The main language is C#, which many find a bit easier to pick up than C++ Store. And, like Unreal, a huge community and tons of resources.
So maybe easier to get started with, plus that giant asset library. Sounds good. Any potential drawbacks with Unity?
Well, while it can look great, it might not quite hit that absolute peak graphical fidelity you sometimes see with Unreal Engine for AAA games. Some devs mention potential performance issues in really complex 3D games, and there's been some talk about fragmentation between different engine versions, causing occasional bugs or issues. Also, like Unreal, there's a free tier, but license costs come into play for certain features or commercial success.
Right. So a great all-rounder, very flexible, huge community, but maybe not the top choice if you're pushing for absolute max graphics or need super fine-tuned performance control. Let's talk about an open source option then, one that's getting a lot of attention.
Godot.
Godot. Yes, it's really interesting. It's open source, completely community driven, and it handles both 2D and 3D development. It's known for being pretty lightweight and very flexible.
And used for games like
some cool indie titles you might know. Hob, Deponia, Brotato was a big hit recently. Cassette Beasts, Haiku the Robot shows its capability.
open source is always appealing. What are the main advantages of Godot?
I think for a lot of people, the biggest thing is it's completely free. Like totally free. No royalties, no license fees, nothing.
Wow, okay. That's a big deal.
It really is. It also offers versatile scripting. It has its own language, GDScript, which is kind of Python-like and pretty nice to use, but it also supports C#, C++, ACK, even visual scripting.
Options are good. Yeah, and it's very lightweight and efficient, so it runs well even on older computers. Uniquely, it actually has separate, dedicated 2D and 3D rendering engines.
Oh, interesting. So it's not trying to do both at once if you don't need it.
Exactly. You're not carrying extra weight. The community is active and growing fast, and it supports cross-platform export. Oh, and its node and scene system is really powerful.
How does that work simply?
Think of everything in your game: a player, an enemy, a bullet as a node. You build these nodes into reusable scenes, like little self-contained parts. Then you assemble those scenes to make your game. It makes organizing and reusing things much easier.
Free, flexible, efficient. Sounds great, especially for indies or people on a budget.
Yeah.
What are the potential downsides or limitations?
Well, while the community's great and growing, it is still smaller than Unity or Unreal's, so maybe fewer tutorials sometimes or fewer pre-made assets. While it's getting more and more capable, it might still be less feature-rich out of the box for, say, really massive, cutting-edge 3D games compared to the big two. The asset marketplace is smaller, and it has seen less adoption in the big AAA studios, which might mean fewer integrations with some third-party tools.
So maybe fewer bells and whistles included initially, but incredibly powerful, totally free, and with a dedicated community. Okay, let's move to an engine famous for 2D and being beginner-friendly. Game Maker Studio.
Right, Game Maker Studio. Definitely a popular choice if you're mainly focused on 2D. It's known for its simplicity and ease of use, and it's got a great track record. Undertale, Spelunky, Hyper Light Drifter, Hotline Miami, Katana Zero, all made with Game Maker.
Wow, those are some iconic 2D games. What makes Game Maker so good for that?
It's just very user-friendly, especially for newcomers. It has a drag-and-drop interface that lets you do a lot without writing code initially.
That sounds really approachable.
It is, and it's highly optimized for 2D, so it often runs those games really well. It uses its own scripting language, GML, which is designed to be simpler and more game-focused.
GML, okay.
Yeah, Game Maker language. There's a strong, active community focused on 2D. Resource management is pretty straightforward, and it supports cross-platform export.
That drag and drop really does sound appealing for starting out.
Yeah.
What are the limits with Game Maker?
Well, its 3D capabilities are very limited, so if you think you might want to do 3D later, it's probably not the best long-term choice.
Right.
And because GML is proprietary, the coding skills might not transfer as directly to other engines using, say, C# or C++ set. Also, while there's a free version, you generally need to buy licenses for commercial release or advanced features. And potentially, performance issues could crop up in extremely complex 2D games. Plus, no native advanced multiplayer support.
Okay, so fantastic for getting started in 2D, maybe prototyping quickly, but might limit you if you want to go 3D or need complex networking. And you mentioned G-Develop briefly. What's the quick take on that?
G-Develop is another great one, especially because it's free, open source, and mostly no code for 2D. It uses a visual event system you connect blocks to build logic.
Like digital Legos for game logic.
Kinda, yeah. Makes it super easy to get started without coding. You can publish to Steam, Android, web. It has lots of free templates too. It's a really solid choice if you want to make 2D games, but, coding isn't your thing, or you want to learn game design concepts visually first.
No code definitely opens doors.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've looked at Unreal, Unity, Godot, Game Maker, G-Develop. When it comes down to it, how does someone actually choose?
Yeah, the million-dollar question. Ultimately, the best engine really truly depends on your project needs, your team skills, or just your own, and the player experience you want to create.
So matching the engine to the goal.
Exactly. Unreal for top-tier AAA visuals. Unity for amazing versatility in 2D, 3D with a huge ecosystem. Godot for that open-source freedom, flexibility, and no cost. Game Maker for streamlined, beginner-friendly 2D. G-Develop for no-code 2D creation.
It sounds like maybe the best first step is just picking one that seems close and trying it.
Absolutely. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Pick one that feels like a decent fit for your goals and skills now. And just dive in. Start learning.
Yeah, the Reddit discussion mentioned that, didn't it? Just start.
Exactly. You can always switch later if you need to. The most important thing is to actually start making something.
Okay, so the big takeaway here seems to be that the game engine world is really diverse. There are tools for pretty much every skill level and every kind of project you can imagine.
For sure. Whether you want mind-blowing graphics or to release on every platform possible, or you love the idea of open source, or you just want to make a fun 2D game without code, there's an engine out there for you.
So now that you've heard about these different options, maybe take a second to think. What kind of game do you picture making? And which engine's strengths seem to line up best with that idea?
Yeah, and what parts of game development sound most interesting to explore? Like how you organize your game world into scenes, or how you make things happen with scripting or visual logic. This is really just the start of the journey.
The journey into potentially creating something really cool.